708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. So the primary proselytizer for the Save America Act, Utah Senator Mike Lee, took to the Senate floor again to excoriate his recalcitrant colleagues into moving with all due speed on the Save America Act. That it is not a lack of time, but a lack of spine that presents the problem.
Both simultaneously be back into session in the Capitol until, wait for it, September 14th. Mid-September. This is the last week, absent some change in the respective chambers' meeting schedules. The last legislative week until mid-September, which will take us to just, what is that, 6 weeks before the November election? That is unacceptable. We don't have a lack of time, Mr. President. We have a lack of spine. Don't ever confuse lack of time with lack of spine, because they're two very different things. If we truly lacked time, that would be one thing. We've got time. We're just choosing not to use it. We're choosing to use it differently, and I would add very poorly if we don't take this up. Take it up now and stay on the bill until it darn well passes. The Senate should stay here tomorrow, this weekend, next week, through weekends and long scheduled recesses, as long as it takes. If opponents want to block it, let them do so in public. If Democrats want to filibuster this bill, let them stand and speak like actual senators, actually filibustering, because that's what filibustering is. And if they don't show up to do that, then we call the question. We call the vote, and we do so at a simple majority, because that's what our rules allow us to do with votes when they don't filibuster. But you can't have the benefit of filibustering if you're not willing to filibuster.
That's a good point. You know, we talked to Will Chamberlain from the Article 3 project yesterday about the prospect that this is going to move, and he is very cynical on the prospect that it's going to move, as am I, for all kinds of obvious reasons that we've talked about over the many, many months we've been talking about this topic intermittently, and particularly now with the president's national address last week on this topic in part. Reconciliation that is being proposed in the House probably doesn't go anywhere. Preserving the filibuster, is the argument being made by those proponents of trying to get reconciliation, SAVE Act, as part of a budgetary bill past the parliamentarian. Will Chamberlain thinks probably unlikely. I agree with him. But this matter of forcing the Dems to actually have to filibuster rather than the quote-unquote zombie filibuster. They indicate they're going to filibuster so you don't make them do it. You don't make them essentially go through the motions. I think that's even less defensible than opposing the SAVE Act itself, like Elisa Murkowski is, like Tom Tillis is. And Mike Lee had more to say on that topic.
Mr. President, one way or another, we have to get this done. The American people are asking us to act. The president has asked us to act. The only thing standing in the way of this bill passing is the Senate. And it's specifically our slavish devotion to the zombie filibuster. But really, our slavish devotion to the zombie filibuster is not about the zombie filibuster or any kind of filibuster at all. It's slavish devotion to the truncated, predictable, light-duty legislative work week. It is that, coupled with the cloture standard, that has created the modern zombie filibuster mess in which our Democrat colleagues were able to keep the Department of Homeland Security at least partially defunded for months and months out of every year. And now they're wanting to use the same trick to make sure that our elections are not secure. Shame on them. Shame on all of them. Shame on anyone who is trying to do that. And for that matter, Mr. President, now that it's become abundantly clear and that we've identified
For more on this, please be joined by Triolo. She is the Republican National Committee Election Integrity Communications Director. Allie, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me this morning.
So, despite Mike Lee's yeoman-like work on the Senate floor there, it seems pretty unlikely that those who are holdouts in the Republican caucus are going to move. Is that a fair read on where things stand?
You know, President Trump, he is a master negotiator. So I wouldn't count it out just yet. He's been coming to Capitol Hill. He's been meeting with John Thune. He's been meeting with our senators. And I think the temperature is even higher given President Trump's address just a couple days ago, where he is peeling back the curtain to the American people and showing that we have foreign interference. 220 million Americans, their voter information stolen by Chinese foreign interference. That is unacceptable. Also, President Trump proving all of the hundreds of thousands of non-citizens on our voter rolls. And I think moving forward, if anyone is opposing the Save America Act after knowing and seeing all of the proof that our elections are not secure, that's going to be pretty hard to sell to voters.
Well, I mean, Senator Lisa Murkowski, for example, in Alaska, she's doing the Potomac two-step on this. She's supportive in principle of the goals, but it's just too draconian. It's difficult to implement in her state. We need a start date past 2026 at least, and she hasn't been able to get amendments to the language of the SAVE Act that satisfy her concerns. I mean, that's what she wrote in the Wall Street Journal just a few days ago in an op-ed entitled "Why I'm Voting Against the Save America Act." So, for example, it doesn't seem like she is particularly movable unless there are sticks that can be deployed behind closed doors. And the antipathy that some of these lame ducks like Cassidy and Tillis have for Trump as well, McConnell too, just suggests that the numbers aren't there, which is what Thune has basically been saying for months.
Well, I know that there is a lot to talk about regarding the Republican Party, but what I do continue to reiterate to your listeners and to anybody in America is that Democrats have been opposing this common sense legislation over and over again, voting no every single time for months now. Why do Democrats oppose the Save America Act? The only reason that it leads me to believe is that they do not want secure elections. They want to cheat in our elections. And at least we have Republicans coming forward saying, this is what we need in order to get this done. There is some form of movement there. But when it comes to Democrats, they flat out say no. And that's wrong. 80% of Americans want photo ID to vote, and they should be listening to the public.
Is there any prospect that anybody on that side, not named John Fetterman, is movable on this, from that we should be, paying attention to or pressuring a person that may be open-minded on the other side other than Fetterman?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to pressure every single one of them to do what is right for our elections. But, it's very difficult to make any sense of the Democrat Party, clearly just taking a look at the way they've ran the replacement of Graham Plattner in Maine. They want to say, oh, no kings in America, even though they handpicked his successor. And Democrats within their own party have come forward and said the way that they went about replacing him was not secure, was not fair. There was no integrity. They were disenfranchised. It's all of the tropes that they claim Republicans are. Democrats are a party of hypocrites. Whatever they say, they do the opposite. So obviously, I'm not putting too much stock in them miraculously doing the right thing. But I think when it comes to voting in November, everyone should remember who stood for this country and who didn't. And certainly the Democrats are not doing that.
So going back to, you mentioned the president's speech last week, as did I, and going back to some of the revelations in his speech about the vulnerabilities in the system and the attempts that were made by both foreign actors like the Chinese communists, as well as domestic actors like Biden's FBI folks. What, in addition, or perhaps without the SAVE Act, can the president and Republicans do to address some of the integrity concerns that were raised by the president in his address?
Well, I think it's a great thing that you and I are talking this morning because the RNC, the Republican National Committee, there is no one else in our conservative ecosystem doing what we do. Right now, we have 160 active election integrity cases across more than 30 states where we are holding states accountable for breaking the law and defending common sense legislation that we want to see nationwide. Recently, we just heard from the Supreme Court that they'll be taking up our proof of citizenship to vote case. We've been defending this in Arizona. And next term, the Supreme Court is going to be hearing this. And we're hopeful that we can see more states impose this common sense legislation. We have also, launched 6 different lawsuits across multiple states that have been allowing people who have never lived in those states to vote in their elections. We had a landmark win out of North Carolina. So for us, we're using all the tools that we have to defend the ballot box, both on the litigation side as well as boots on the ground investment. We have 17 state directors in all of our target states that are devoted just to securing the ballot box and election integrity measures. And I know this is so long. My last thing I want to say is this week is also our week of action where we need patriots to step up and help us protect the ballot box. They can go to protectthevote.com and sign up to be a poll worker or poll observer. We need eyes and ears in the room to make sure that these elections and these ballots are being counted fairly.
Well, and I assume that's particularly true in states like the one President Trump talked about last week in his address, Michigan, where you don't have friendly or election integrity-oriented secretaries of state and state officials, and in what looks to be a very competitive Senate race and a possible pickup opportunity for Republicans. So maybe it's less mission critical in Texas, where you have people more serious about ballot integrity, or Ohio, where you have people more serious about ballot integrity. And so a disproportionate share of resources need to be devoted to states that are not so serious about said topic, like Michigan. Is that right?
Oh, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because yesterday, actually, in Detroit, the Board of Elections had a public testing event where they were able to, show the public how their electronic voting systems were working. And we actually had RNC officials there monitoring the process, monitoring the way the ballots were being counted to make sure that no funny business is happening leading up to November. So we're doing everything we can to defend the ballot box. We hope Congress passes the Save America Act, and President Trump on his side is unveiling the truth to the public. He's also enacting common sense executive orders to strengthen security around mail-in ballots in our elections. But the saddest part about this conversation to me, Dan, is that there is half of the nation, the Democrats, who seem to not want secure elections. And I just want to know why, other than they must want to cheat. There's really no other logical explanation.
And there was also progress on that score of mail-in ballots. There's this litigation surrounding what the post office can or can't do with states that are non-compliant with the president's executive orders on the topic. And recently, there was a victory in the direction of allowing the post office to compel compliance if they're going to process those mail-in ballots. Yes?
Yes, you're exactly right. And just taking a look at mail-in ballots in general, there are so many countries around the world that have security measures when it comes to voting that are much stronger than what we have in America. Proof of citizenship, paper ballots, photo ID, hundreds of nations around the world. So America is the greatest country on earth. We know that. And we need to have the most secure elections on earth. That is the bare minimum. And I think that Republicans are doing everything they can to get us to that point.
Allie Triolo is the RNC's Election Integrity Communications Director. Allie, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And she joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Foundations of Freedom, a look at America's founding principles and the leaders who shaped our nation.
In 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed the Morrill Act, helping states create colleges focused on agriculture, mechanics,